Well, welcome to the Greg and Leisa show.
I'm Greg.
And I'm Lisa. And today we're going to talk about seed planting and reaping what we sow. I'm going to dedicate this show to my dad. And if you knew my dad, you knew that he loved gardening. So, reaping what we sow, literally, though, through gardening and figuratively as we journey through life, you're going to see how they go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
But March is the time of year that my dad would start planting his seeds. He would buy the seeds or he would use seeds that he saved from the prior year. And then he would pull out all the trays that he saved from the prior year. He would use good soil or soil that he composted himself or purchase some new soil. Or he would plant the seeds and start to grow his own plants instead of purchasing them already grown and ready for planting. Planting his own seeds took time, and he would plant the seeds, he'd water them, he'd keep the plants warm by either putting them on top of the refrigerator or taking them out in the sunlight. He would baby them until they started to grow and they were ready to be planted. So he would grow tomatoes and cucumbers and green beans and corn and sometimes sunflowers. He loved his garden and he spent a lot of time working on it. He would fight the rabbits, the birds, and the bugs that would try to eat his plants after they were planted in the ground. As the plants started to grow, he would watch them. He would water them. He would sucker the plants to remove the little sprouts to help the other sprouts grow bigger and stronger and produce bigger and better tomatoes, longer cucumbers, hardier green beans, sweeter corn, and taller sunflowers. He put a rain barrel on his gutter on the back of the house to actually collect the
Oh yeah, yeah.
rainwater.
Lots of people do that.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah,
that's a pretty serious, and
it is.
they get really I mean, not crazy, but it gets really elaborate.
They do. Some of them paint garden scenes and different things on them,
Yeah.
and so he used the rainwater to keep his garden growing. And this was an annual tradition for him, so it was something that he just loved to do. When it was time for the bounty and everything started coming in, he would share his tomatoes and his produce with his family, his neighbors, and his friends. He had a friend who loved to garden as much as he did, and he would either sit with him in the kitchen and drink coffee and eat donuts or rolls, and they would talk about their gardens. And sometimes they would sit outside in their lawn chairs and they would talk some more about their gardens. But my dad spent a lot of time in his garden taking care of it, from planting the seeds to start the plants to removing the plants in the fall once the first frost hit and they could no longer produce anything for the season. The growing season was over. But during the end of the growing season, my dad would take some of his best tomatoes. He would pull out the seeds. He would start drying them out so that he would have seeds for next year in anticipation for his next new garden and the new growing season. So, the time, love, and attention that my dad gave to his garden every year produced an abundance of food, and the food that he grew was shared with many. So, planting seeds in a garden is a lot like growing our relationships with our family, friends, and loved ones, including the most important one with God.
So yeah, building something to last. As we know from gardening life and our relationship with God, it takes time, planning, and you got to start at the beginning with all that, cultivating the groundwork, planting the seeds, or taking small steps. In other life scenarios, watering and caring for the plants, spending time doing special things, and giving needed love and attention. To our relationships and especially our relationship with God. That a plant, the relationship, needs to grow. Patience definitely takes patience. Months to go from planting seeds to a full grown bounty. Certainly for a garden, but in relationships with God and other humans, that can take more than months. It can
Oh,
take
yeah.
it.
Take years. Well, it takes a lifetime if you
Yeah,
have it developing that relationship,
yeah.
you know. But I'm sure there's a saying that I'm sure you've all heard. It says, "You reap what you sow."
That's better than the one you said earlier, which was you sow what you reap. And I'm like,
Yeah,
technically you could replant the seeds, right? So that kind of works, but
yeah,
that's not really what. No, the saying is you reap what you sow, of
right.
course.
But of course, there's several verses in the Bible that pertain to seed
Wow. Oh,
planting.
Bible
Yeah,
verses.
yep.
One of these
But
days you're not going to think of one.
Oh, I don't know about that. God's got us covered.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
But these verses not only pertain to our walk and relationship with Jesus Christ, but it also pertains to our life as we journey each step of the way. So, 2 Corinthians 9:6 says, "Now this I say, he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and he who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully."
Yeah, and that's
That's
very
your reap
fitting.
what you sow right
Yeah,
there.
and there's I think another similar saying. Those of us who love sports might say you're gonna miss all the shots you
You
never
never
take. If
took?
you
Yeah.
never plant the seeds, you certainly can't. You have nothing to sow. You have nothing to reap, and not all of it works out. And I think that's the tough.
Yeah.
That's the tough thing we get into, and we've talked about things not working out in a lot of our
Yeah.
topics, but
Right.
you got to keep planting.
You do.
Also, here in book of Galatians, chapter 6, verse 9 says, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." See, I should have said that instead of talking. It was right there.
There's your answer.
Paul really addressed it much better than I did right there.
Yeah, well, that's just it. We're not supposed to give up, and we never know. Just because it doesn't work out in our time doesn't mean that it's
Well, right.
not
That's
going
the
to
thing
work
about
out.
seeds. And obviously, some
Right,
trees take a lot,
right.
hundreds of years to get where they're going. So
Exactly.
it's a
So,
good picture of that.
yeah. But the Bible often uses metaphors to teach us the wisdom and truth. So, sowing seeds of love, righteousness that will blossom into beautiful things later in life. It makes us think beyond right now, but also into the future. Impact, what we do impacts tomorrow and beyond. And so we always have to be mindful of that.
Right. And so, planting and sowing seeds in the context of life is about investing in other people's lives, sharing and sowing and showing love, compassion, empathy, kindness, helping others. It's not only what Christ wants us to do, but it's what we should be doing to help others. If we do not sow into other people's lives, then don't expect others to have love, compassion, empathy, and kindness towards us. And we see that theme all over the
Oh,
Bible.
yeah,
The golden rule: treat others the way you want to be treated, and
exactly.
many, many, many other examples. So that's the concept of you reap what you sow.
All right. And for those of you who don't know what the golden rule is,
I didn't even know that was right there.
it is do unto others as you would have
We
others
do these
do
things
unto
pretty off
you.
the cuff, and
Yeah.
so
Yep.
see, great
Yep.
minds.
Yep. So does it all sound familiar? But the question is, what is the spiritual meaning of seed in the Bible, Greg?
So Paul's metaphor: we're all farmers, so we're scattering spiritual seeds across the fields of life. So grace, joy, love. Even the things that aren't so great: hatred, jealousy, selfishness. The seeds, one way or another, whether they're those good fruits or those bad fruits, they're going to bear a fruit.
They are. They are. So the question is going to be, what kind of fruit will they produce? And it is all going to depend on what kind of seeds that you planted or you sowed. And it takes time to plant a seed and wait. And I like this saying, a seed today grows a forest tomorrow, which was just talking about, the
Yeah,
trees that take 100 years or more to grow.
but there are things that do happen, more in the short term. We don't always see all of them. So from
Right.
that one little seed you plant, there are
There are things that happen.
those
Yeah.
those roots underneath and everything else.
Right.
Just to be metaphorical again,
Right.
it goes far.
It gives you that solid foundation
Yes,
as it grows deeper, just like your foundation with Jesus Christ grows deeper the more time that you spend
yeah,
with Him and you read the Word.
and it's not always the stuff you can just see and observe with your eyes
Mm-hmm.
commonly.
Right. But we are the seed, and that is why God plants us in a variety of different scenarios, trials and challenges, etc., because He has something to teach us or something He wants us to learn that is going to help us grow. And I think that kind of goes back to when we talked the other week about looking at things half full or half empty.
Well, right.
If
Yeah.
we look at our trials and challenges as, okay, what do you want me to learn from this, God? Versus, man, do I have to really go through this? It's on how you look at the situation that you're actually going through. But we are like seeds, a seed is so small. It's just like the faith of the
Yeah.
mustard seed that
Hmm.
can move a mountain. And it grows to be so beautiful, just like a flower or a cucumber for food. And, it should teach us that it's not what's on the outside, it's what is on the
Yeah.
inside. It's the inside of the seed that, helps it grow with all of the nurturing and caring and watering.
Right.
So,
And it tells you, how hard faith is, right? Because you
mhm.
have as little as a mustard seed, you're going to be moving mountains. Now, that doesn't mean you can be out there like, and the
Oh,
mountain's
yeah.
going to move,
Yeah, yeah.
with your mind type of thing. But yeah, that is more of a metaphor. But it does go to show it takes a lot of work. Faith takes a lot of.
It does, but you only have to have that small amount of
Yeah,
faith to really get through your big trials or
it's.
tribulations.
I
And
guess it's easy
mhm,
for us to say it is. It's really hard. It can be really hard to do.
it can be, especially if you're a new Christian and you're just learning, your relationship with God and how strong it is.
I mean, sometimes for me, the number one thing that seems to happen to my faith is it gets tested
Mm-hmm. It
a
does.
lot.
Yeah, it does. So that's your patience teaching too.
Yeah, and that's just saying you
Yeah.
have to really like the garden. You really have to.
You have to nurture it and take
It's
care of
almost
it.
like we're gonna
Yeah.
say you have to work on this stuff.
Ah, there's that word work. Yeah. One of the things that I was always taught was anything worth having was worth working for.
That's
And
yeah,
that is the key too. But also teachers and professors, they plant seeds into students' minds
sure,
and, looking for future generations to learn and to grow. And that's how God sees us as well. He sees our insides and he knows the motives of our hearts and he loves us in spite of ourselves. And sometimes, I don't know about you, Greg, but a lot of times I get in my own way.
oh, I certainly never do that. All the time. I feel
Yeah.
like I make a career of getting in my
Yeah.
own way
I hear
sometimes,
you. So,
but I mean we all do. So that's
yeah,
you know
it's normal.
yeah,
So,
it's
yeah.
kind of part of the human condition, as it were. We got to recognize it. We got to do our best to
Step aside.
step. Yeah,
Yeah.
yes,
Step aside.
yep.
Yeah.
And even obviously we're Christians, and we relate that, and we want everybody to be on board with that. But even in the secular world, there's the idea of getting out of your own way is not something that
Well, no, that's
is
something
is
everybody
it's
deals with.
it's it's not an uncommon thing for anybody in
Yeah.
any
No.
worldview or
Yeah, no matter what you're going through, you have to
yeah,
evaluate where you are in the situation. And, you know, sometimes you need to get out of your own way just to see the situation as a whole.
right.
But there's a parable of seed planting in Luke chapter 8, verses 5 through 15.
Right, and we didn't actually type that on the sheet. So, kids, this is an actual printed Bible. It's actually not my phone. My phone's being used
Right.
to record it, so I'm going to actually read words from a printed page.
All right. And it is the red letter edition, too, which means the red letters are
Yeah,
words directly from God.
right, and that just makes it easier to tell. If you have a
Yes.
Bible that doesn't have red letters in it, that doesn't
No,
mean anything. It's just
no, but it's nice to see
yeah,
because you can say, this is what God said
right.
to the disciples and the
So,
people.
yep. So we said Luke 8, 5 to 15. I'm actually going to start at 4 just for the
Okay.
little intro to it. So, Um, and when a great crowd was gathering and people from town after town came to him, he said in a parable, a sower went out to sow his seed, and as he sowed, some fell along the path and was trampled underfoot, and the birds of the air devoured it. And some fell on the rock, and as it grew up, it withered away because it had no moisture. And some fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up with it and choked it. And some fell into good soil, and grew and yielded 100-fold. And as he said these things, he called out, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. And when his disciples asked him what this parable meant, he said, to you it has been given to know the secrets of the kingdom of God, but for others they are in parables, so that seeing they may not see, and hearing they may not understand. Now the parable is this: the seed is the word of God. The ones along the path are those who have heard, then the devil comes and takes away the word from their hearts, so that they may not believe and be saved. And the ones on a rock are those who, when they hear the word, receive it with joy. But these have no root. They believe for a while, and in time of testing, fall away. And as for what fell among the thorns, they are those who hear, but as they go on their way, they are choked by the cares and riches and pleasures of life, and their fruit does not mature. As for that in the good soil, there are those who, hearing the word, hold it fast in an honest and good heart, bear fruit with patience. Now, I think it's important to clarify that when we say something fell on the rock, we're not talking about Dwayne Johnson. We're
No.
talking about an actual rock.
Rock. You're right.
But yeah, that's we could have just read that instead of doing the show, and that probably would have been
Oh, wouldn't have been as much fun.
no. But that's really what we're. It's really what this is all
exactly
about.
it
Yeah,
is. But in looking at the relationship too with those verses and looking at where our relationships are with people and our family and our relationship with God, it all comes together. If you don't, if the effort that you sow into your relationship, whether it be your spouse, your kids, co-workers, and you put little into it and it falls on, deaf ears, they hear but they don't absorb it and don't participate, then the relationship isn't going to go anywhere either. And that's
right.
like our relationship with Jesus Christ. But Galatians 6:8 says, for the one who sows to his own flesh will from the flesh reap corruption, but the one who sows to the Spirit will from the Spirit reap eternal life. So, if you're sowing from your flesh versus sowing for Jesus Christ,
Right.
it's not going to be eternal.
Right. Proverbs chapter 11, verse 18. The wicked earns deceptive wages, but one who sows righteousness gets a sure reward.
Right. So again, it's telling you, if you're going to sow bad seeds, you're not going to get a bounty.
No, I mean it's said another way. It's
Mhm.
you're getting out of it what you put into it.
It is. That's exactly right. So Matthews 13:38 says, the field is the world, the good seed is the Son of God, the weeds are the enemy, and the people who are
It's so weird.
unbelievers.
It's almost like these verses are consistent with one another.
Yeah.
It's
That's kind of like, he's got to constantly tell us so that we
yeah,
really learn, and
yeah,
it,
and
solidifies and builds our
it's set,
foundation.
yeah, and it's said in different
Mm-hmm.
ways.
Mm-hmm.
It all is the same truth, but a
Right.
different parable here, more direct over here.
Right. And that's part of reading the Bible,
Yeah,
is it reaches somebody one way and it reaches somebody else another way, because that's the way God speaks to us, where we are in our own personal journey. James 3, verse 18, and a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace.
well, yeah, you can't sow
If you're a
war.
peacemaker,
You can't sow war and get peace.
that's
That'd
right.
be ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah. But it pays to be the peacemaker.
Yes.
So
So if we go back to gardening for a minute, studies show there are many ways gardening plays a positive role in our lives and our mental health, and as we're going to see, I think that applies to you know sowing literal seeds and sowing spiritual seeds.
that's right. Because when you're gardening, it provides a space to be creative, it exercises, it decompresses you, and it's fun. And this can be achieved by any type of hobby that you're interested in, because it's relaxing and it
Well, yeah,
takes your focus away from whatever problems or stressor that you're actually dealing
but
with.
maybe not so much for those of us who might live in triple-digit climates year-round. That
Yeah,
might not be fun to be outside gardening
yeah.
all the time, isn't it?
But who knew playing in the dirt could be so much fun and good for you? So now, I used to tell your wife that you needed to have a dirt pile delivered in the backyard so that the kids could just go out and play. I wasn't so crazy, because it is therapeutic, and especially with kids with emotional and trauma challenges. But gardening is good for adults, and as the kids grow, they could learn to garden, but you just need a hose outside to wash them off
Yeah,
before they come in,
you know,
because sometimes they like to play in the dirt and they're going to get dirty,
and,
but
and
it's
and if you can't call in a pile of dirt or sand,
mm-hmm.
they'll find the dirt. So don't. The
Yeah,
dirt's gonna get found one way or another.
Yeah, but that's why you end up with holes in your yard, because they get fixated in the digging and they don't
Well, you
they
see, we tried to put the specific thing in the specific place, but the thing still. So it's okay.
yeah.
That's yard's going to get another bit of work before life is over here anyway. So
Yeah. So, but getting dirty, planting gardens, playing in the dirt has had therapeutic results mentally and physically, emotionally, socially since the 19th century. So when you think about it, it's been happening for a long, long time.
yep, and so plants, dirt. It's non-discriminatory. It's non-threatening. Anyone can do it.
Well,
There's
almost anyone, because if you look at this plant I got for Christmas, it had 4 leaves when it started. I'm sorry, Kim, she gave it to me for Christmas, but I don't have a green thumb, and I'm
well,
happy it still has two
yeah. I
leaves
mean, it
on it.
says what you wrote in our notes is anyone can do this, not
Yeah,
that anyone will do
or
this.
should do that.
Yeah,
But it is true that it is something that can help anyone.
hmm
You don't have to have issues just to play in the dirt. Even the people that are healthy, can still get an energy boost and a mental health boost just through gardening too. My dad loved to garden, and he used to ask me, "You gonna have a garden at your house?" And I would tell him, "Maybe when I retire," because I would think it was something that you have to love to do. I mean, I do love being outside and mowing and
yeah, yeah,
trimming trees and things like that. And it's relaxing because you can also see what you have done from start to finish. The mowing and the trimming
yeah, yeah.
isn't
Absolutely.
immediate,
Yeah,
that you can see what you've done. But it is relaxing to dig in the dirt and to plant and to have fun. But gardening lowers your stress, anxiety, and depression, and those are all good things. It's good for your blood pressure when it gets
right.
lowered.
Yep. So when people garden, just a few things that happen. They focus on the task at hand. Planting, watering, weeding, pruning. They're present in the moment. It's taken out of everyday stressors. Builds self-esteem. Promotes a sense of purpose. You're accomplishing something. Takes time and patience, though. Does give a sense of accomplishment watching those things grow. And, you're being accountable to another living thing other than yourself, can ease anxiety. It's the love nurturing effect of, watering, trimming, giving sunlight, accountable to a living. What do you
Yeah.
have to say for yourself?
Yeah, I have to admit, I haven't done so
I
good
think
with
it's I think it's
it.
great. We did, we could
uh,
have picked any plant in the world, probably well, not in the world, but you know,
yeah,
in Ohio, there's plenty of plants to choose from, and
yeah. So,
I love this.
but we've talked about that word nurturing
Yes.
in past topics, and the lack of the nurturing. It's just like watching your plants thrive and grow. If you're not going to pay attention to them and take care of them, they're not going to grow. They're going to probably die. It's kind of just like your relationship when you're nurturing and your kids and your family and your relationships. Nurturing is very, very important.
Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
the tough thing, about those is, you know, and this plant still has a chance, by the way, I think, but once if you decide this doesn't have a chance, throw it out or
Yeah,
put it out in the yard, let it naturally
yeah,
decompose and all that. But
yeah.
you can't really just do that with people.
No, you can't.
Well, some people do, and
Yeah,
that was relates to
yeah,
a lot of the things we've discussed. You
right,
definitely shouldn't. So you know, let's just say we're not going to do that with people for the
right,
sake of this
right,
discussion, and you have to figure out how to bring that back,
right.
and it's very difficult.
It is, and you have to, sometimes do the research and you have to look at it and say, just like with your relationships, maybe you have to say you're sorry to heal that relationship and to get it to grow
Or
again.
maybe you have to keep saying it, right? Because
Yeah,
some
right,
things,
right.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
you can say sorry for it and be okay for a bit, and the thing that happened might have been so deep that someone accepts an apology and they're not meaning to still hold you to it, but
Right.
triggers still happen.
Yeah, and that's where it takes that time
Yeah, yeah,
to, we talked about last week with the brokenness, and taking that time to heal, and letting God heal the hurt wounds.
Yeah.
And but nurturing is vitally important. But gardening is calming, it's relaxing, it gives you the opportunity to get away from the world, the news, for a change, just to look and feel the dirt in your hands and what God created.
So if you don't have space for a garden, there's some options for that. So you can grow herbs in small pots. There's window flower pots. You can join a community garden where, you can not only plant but meet others, and those are very cool. Community gardens, a lot of places around here have been starting to do that, and it gets people out there, and it gets people, something else to do.
Right.
And
Yeah, and it's getting you out with to be social, and
yeah,
also being in a community garden, you can learn from them and see
yeah,
what they're doing, and before you know it, you might be meeting for coffee or bringing your lawn chair like my dad and his friend, and just sitting out and looking at your garden and watching it grow, and just taking that time. So the next question is, what do you, if you don't have a green thumb like me, what do you do?
so yeah, there is good news for that. You don't have to be natural at gardening to get those
Yep.
mental health benefits, right? So it's a skill. People are at different levels of any skill, so you can
Mm-hmm.
learn it and develop it. And the good thing about gardening is, you don't have to enter competitions. Nobody's out there judging what you're doing.
Yeah.
You can kind of judge your own progress, and you can start slow with plants that are harder to kill. Maybe what should have happened here. But there are a lot of low maintenance plants:
Yeah.
succulents, aloe vera, spider plants, crops like tomatoes, peppers. But still, planting takes time, so you know do a little homework and research on plants and gardening and what works in the area you live.
Mm-hmm.
What's gonna work in Ohio is not going to be what works out west, or
Right.
even
Right.
southeast, and you
Yeah.
know Montana, North Dakota.
Florida,
Yeah,
all those
yeah,
extremely
yeah. I
hot
mean, they're all
places.
they're all a little bit
Right.
different.
Right.
You know.
Right. But it's kind of like anything else that you get interested in, is that you do some research and see,
Yeah,
see what's going on. My dad would read up on, which are the best seeds to buy. And sometimes he would order, certain brands to come in the mail, or, he would like his own seeds. And you do your research because you're always, changing it up. Uh, but you can also, get advice from your local garden center. You can join a gardening club.
sure.
Even, it's like we just said, you can learn from other gardeners in the community garden if you join one. You can have fun and enter your plants and flowers and your produce into a local fair.
Yeah,
The 4 H kids do it, adults do it. You can, show your flowers or show how big your
yeah.
cucumber
Just
is,
make sure.
just for
Yeah,
fun,
remember the point is the fun,
fun.
right?
Right, right.
So if you're somebody who's doing this, for the mental health benefit, and you've
Yeah,
got a day job during the week,
yeah,
you're probably you may stack up well at some of these competitions,
yeah,
and
yeah,
you may not. It may not be entirely consistent, but you have
yeah.
to do it because you love doing it, not
Right.
for a
Right, and
prize.
you
That
don't want to add the stressor of a
Yeah,
competition
I
to
was gonna
do
say
it. Yeah.
I don't mean to say you won't likely
Mm-hmm.
win or place in any of these competitions,
Yeah.
but you have to be prepared for that possibility.
Yeah. But even though if you're not in it to win it, it's okay, because it's just about sharing something beautiful that you grew, whether it wins or
Right.
not. You
And a
know.
lot of these competitions, her story about baking competition your daughter, my wife, was in,
Mm-hmm.
where she didn't win, she didn't even place, but all of the actual people, not the
Mm-hmm.
chefs who were there trying her stuff,
Mm-hmm.
they were coming up, and it was a big
Right.
networking thing. So even though she didn't quote unquote win that, you know, in my view, you kind of
Yeah.
won that
She
for your
still
business,
won. Right.
So
Correct. Yeah.
there are lots of ways to
Right.
get benefit out
Right.
of those.
Right. Um, But you can also share what you have planted and grown with others. That's
Mm-hmm.
always good, because, you can take some flowers to somebody, or you can take produce or tomatoes or something and share your bounty. It opens the doors of communication, and then you can share your experience with others. Just say, hey, you know what? I tried gardening this year and it was really cool. Maybe you should try it. It might help you relieve some stress,
Sure.
or, just get your hands in the dirt. Or you can sell your flowers and your produce to others and make some extra money.
And it really is, because
Hmm.
if you get a good crop, bag of seeds costs X amount of money, and guaranteed the produce from that, if you take care of it, it's
Hmm.
gonna, you know,
Yeah.
you can profit off it. It's,
Right.
one person, one small garden. You're not making millions, but you're also not making nothing.
Right, exactly. And not only that, if you have the extra, you can freeze it or,
Well,
and
yeah,
prepare
yeah,
for the winter
yeah. You
for
certainly
your
don't.
family.
Selling it is
Yeah.
one idea. You certainly
Right.
don't have to. There's
Right.
lots
Right.
of ways,
Right.
such as our last little bullet point here. You can donate the fruits of your hands and labor to local nonprofits, food pantries, food banks, families in need, flowers to local hospice centers,
Right.
or
Yeah.
so.
That's
And
a
there's a lot more you can do too, but those
right.
are just
Right. A lot of times people don't think about their flowers, and especially after funerals or something when there's an abundance of them and you really don't know what to do with all of them. You can donate them to the hospice center because what they do is they take the flowers out of them and they fill little bud vases for each room so that they, share them with the family and that's there during that time. And there's so much more. There's more things that you can do with your gardening or your hobby. And I like to paint. And so I always tell people when they look at my paintings and stuff, I think it's my therapy,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
because it is relaxing. It is something I like to do. And it's just, would be the same effect for me as the gardening is.
And really, the power of getting your mind onto something else is,
Mm-hmm.
because you
Right.
can be painting. I have other things I like to do, and you can sit there and before you know it, it's already like the end of the day, and you've been
Right.
working on a thing, and oh yeah, I didn't
Yeah,
really think about that other
I know.
whatever that other
Whatever was
business
going
is.
on,
Yeah,
yeah, it was kind of like your breakaway. But Psalms 128 2, and this is the King James Version. And a lot of people don't like the King James Version just because of the these and the thous in it. But the two verses tonight that I picked out of the King James Version I liked because it just had an eloquence to it when you read it. And it says, "For thou shalt eat the labor of thine hands, happy shall thou be, and it shall be with thee." And basically, that's saying that you're going to eat the fruits of your labor from your hands that you worked, and you're going to be happy, and you're going to thank God that gave it to you.
right.
You know?
And for people that you're allowed to like or not like King James, at the end of the day,
Yeah. Oh,
all
yeah.
these translations, we're reading the same thing. Whether there's a few these and thous in
Yeah.
there, or
And the newer versions, the New International Version, the English Standard Version, you'll learn to get a version that you like to use. Or
yeah.
sometimes you're going to refer to all of them, like we
Well,
do.
or yeah, or that. But I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, the best one is the one that you're going to read.
Right. That's
so,
exactly right. If you're not going to read it, it's
so
not going to do you any good.
because honestly, like, some people don't know about this stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
some people
Yeah.
would get anxious about it if they knew
Yeah.
about which one's the best.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you want to make sure it's okay. People, if you don't have one and you walk into a store and you go to the Bible
Mm-hmm.
section, you can't really make a bad choice back there.
Right. No, and you can look at the inside and read some verses, and
Oh,
you'll
that's true.
know.
You can treat it, obviously it's the Word of God, but as far as purchasing a specific book of a
Yeah.
specific version, you can treat it like any other,
Right.
you know,
Right.
that exercise of it is just
Right.
shopping.
Right. Yeah. And, there are versions that are easier to read and easier to understand if you haven't been, brought up in the church or had that relationship with Jesus Christ for a long time. So it's like you said, it's getting the one that you can relate to and that you will read.
Yep.
Because if you buy it, it sits on your coffee
And,
table. It's not going to do anybody any good.
if you get the wrong idea out of something, there's grace in that. And that's why you go to church, and that's why you have
Right.
community. So
Right.
you can talk these things over and work through all that stuff.
Right. So there's two other versions that I put in our notes that's different than the King James. One is, "You will enjoy the fruit of your hands, your fruit of your labor."
And the other one is, "You shall eat the fruit of the labor of your hands. You shall be blessed. It shall be with you."
Yeah.
Those are actually more words than King James, I feel like.
Yeah. Mm.
So it's not always like, don't get too down on King James sometimes, because in
Yeah.
that specific instance, it was a little more condensed anyway.
Yeah. Deuteronomy 28:8, it says, "The Lord shall command the blessings upon thee in thy storehouses, and in all that thou settest thine hand unto, and he shall bless thee in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee."
So yeah, um,
Yeah.
we
So,
we prosper by the
right,
fruit of our hands. God wants us to work and enjoy those blessings of our labor so that we can share it with others.
right. So, seed planting and sowing, what you reap, goes hand in hand with our relationship with others. And you need to answer these questions.
So, where do your seeds fall? Dry ground, between the rocks, not Dwayne Johnson, or on the good soil?
Yeah. And what type of seeds are you planting? Love, kindness, hatred, strife?
What does your harvest time look like? Is it plentiful or is it barren? Is there nothing there
I
to
know.
be to be
Yeah.
reaped?
And what have you given to God lately? I think that question has to be in the forefront of our minds a lot because as Christ followers and as talk to God, we want him to do what we need done, and we expect him to do things, and we pray for him to do things, and then people get upset if their prayers don't get answered. But I always have to go back to that question: is you want God to do things for you, but what have you done for God
Well,
lately?
right,
you
because
know
it's
it's not it's a two-way street.
oh
It's
yeah,
not a one-sided relationship, and you have to be obedient and give back to God
and
just like he gives to
it's tough,
you.
and I get into as much as anybody about I prayed for something and something happened a different way, and I didn't want it that way, but when I'm able to take a step back from those and think about it, yeah, of course I wouldn't understand what the literal creator of everything
Hmm.
is thinking. I
Yeah.
can't see everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like I was praying for something this last week that, I needed to see done by Sunday, and we are supposed to pray specific prayers.
Oh yeah,
And we
yeah,
are,
and little or big,
yeah, right.
God
But
will sort through that and
yeah,
do
but
what
you
he.
can also ask him for specific amounts, specific
Oh yeah,
things,
oh yeah.
And so, Sunday was kind of like my deadline. And so, all week I'm saying, I'm not worried about it, God. It's for you. It's for you. You got this covered. And in the back of my mind, I'm playing figures and numbers and things in my head, and
Mm-hmm.
thinking, I'm not going to worry about it, God. You got this. So Sunday when I sat down to do what was on my plate, I chuckled because he did it. He just didn't do it the way I was expecting him to do it or
Sure.
thought he
Mm-hmm.
would do it. But he answered it, and it was okay. And so we do. And, in going through this dialogue with God about what was happening, it's like, well, God, I did this and I did that. And my faith is in you. I've put my steps out there, for you, and I'm holding you true to your promises. And so it is a two-way street, but you do really need to be obedient and have that faith, and, ask yourself, what have you done for God lately?
Yeah,
You
because
have to do things for God and for your relationship.
right. And like you said, it's one of those things where God doesn't always do it exactly the way you thought it should
Mm-hmm.
happen. But if you don't ask, whatever it is,
Right.
there's never going to be any result to it.
That's right. And the Bible says you have not because you ask not.
Right.
Even though he knows what's in your mind and he knows what's in your heart, he still wants to hear you ask. It's just like a dad and a kid. A lot of times as parents, we know what they want,
Mm-hmm.
but we want to hear them ask it
Yeah,
and to say
the
it.
Christmas list is a good example of that.
Yeah, yeah.
You hear your kids all year. I want this. See this
Mm-hmm.
on TV. Then you ask them to make a list. Well, why? It's part of
Mm-hmm.
making it a
Right,
you know.
right. So, but you need to ponder those questions. Where do your seeds fall? You know, what have you done? What type of seeds are you planting? What is your harvest time going to look like? That reap what you sow. What are you going to reap? What have you sowed?
Mm-hmm.
And what have you gone, and done for God lately?
So yeah, ponder on those questions. Search your soul, life, relationships, but get right with God. You get right with God. All that other stuff
Right. It'll
does
come.
follow. It's not
Right.
always easy,
Right. It's
but
not.
the God
No.
is the foundation. So if
That's
you have
right.
the foundation, you literally can do any of the other stuff.
That's right. And so start your garden. It's March. This is my dad's month of starting to plant his seeds. Nurture, wait with patience, and as you care for them, watch them grow.
So most of all, go play in the dirt. Get all the health benefits, and if you don't like gardening, it doesn't have to be gardening, but getting out in God's creation somehow,
Yep.
experiencing that somehow, I think is good. Stuff inside is just fine, and if you can do
Yeah.
that inside, but you
take
know,
a hike, take a
but
walk in the
the
national
fresh
parks.
air is
Yeah,
is
it is.
it is getting to see
Right.
what God
What
did, and
God's
not that
created.
God
Yeah.
doesn't do stuff in your house, but
Oh, yeah, yeah.
getting out of your normal and seeing
Right.
like creation and interacting with it.
Yeah. So you will enjoy the fruits of your labor if you plant your seeds with God as your first priority in your life. And He will, continue to bless you and be with you 24/7.
Yeah.
So, Greg,
Yeah.
you going to plant a garden in your backyard this year?
I, honestly, there used to be a lot of plants back there, and then we put grass back there, and all the grass is grown back. So,
Yeah.
if we wanted to, we certainly could.
Yeah.
Keeping your grandchildren away from it or interacting with it in the right way might present a challenge. That's not saying don't do it, by the way.
Yeah, well,
You,
no,
you,
but you know what? It could get one of those big pots and fill it with dirt and do like a small cherry tomato plant
yeah,
that
there's
you
there's
can,
lots of
that you
there's
can work with them on
yeah,
and teach them a
there's lots of
lesson
options
about
for that. And I
seed
don't
planting.
and don't let me make it sound like, oh, there's a challenge to this. So that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. That just means you
No,
got something to think about.
right?
It's
Yes, and
you know
pray
one
about it and
yeah
see where God leads. That's
yeah
what I say. So,
absolutely
yeah. Well, we hope you enjoyed our seed planting. Um, we are going to reap what we sow all through life, and it's better to get a bounty that's full of blessings than it is to get nothing or
absolutely
rocks. So seek the Lord. May the peace of God be with you this week as you travel your journey of life. And we'll see you next time.
right. And keep her away from your plants because this is see everybody.
Yeah. Goodbye.
Get some